We are blessed again today to celebrate the memorial of another American saint, St. John Neumann. He was born in Bohemia, so he wasn't an American-born saint like St. Elizabeth Ann Seton yesterday. But he became an American citizen in 1848 and was the first American bishop, I think the only American bishop to be canonized, but he's an American citizen, so he's an American. And we're blessed because we need American saints to inspire ourselves and all that we do here in America. And as things are deteriorating here in our country, we need these models like St. Caterina Tekakwitha, canonized last year in October, and St. Francis Xavier Cabrini. These American saints we're blessed to have, and we wish to make ourselves saints. And St. John Neumann was a great bishop. He was a short man, and he was called a stubby priest. He was ride on his horse, and his feet wouldn't reach the stirrups, so the people would laugh at him. But he was a very holy man and very austere as well. He built himself a small log cabin in one of his parishes, and he didn't sleep much and didn't turn the fire on much, and was known to eat bread and water often, and did a lot of traveling, and it's said that he only had one pair of boots during his whole stay in America. But he studied school in Bohemia, in a town called Budweis, probably named the beer after that town. But he studied in his high school years, and then in his seminary in that town. And in 1835, he was ready to be ordained, but his bishop got sick, and after he got well, he didn't schedule any more ordinations because there were too many priests in that country. And then he contacted many bishops around Europe, and they wouldn't ordain him either because there were too many priests at that time, interesting enough. So he had heard stories about America from an American bishop, and wrote there to Bishop John Du Bois in New York, and he accepted him for ordination. So he traveled to America, walking all the way to France, and then taking a boat to America, arriving in 1835, and was ordained in 1836 by Bishop John Du Bois, the same bishop that ordained St. John a bishop about 15 years later. So he was one of 36 priests in the New York diocese, which also included New Jersey, so a large area, and they had to minister to 200,000 Catholics. And he was sent up to Buffalo and to care for German immigrants there around the Niagara Falls area. And he would travel to village, ministering to the sick and teaching catechism, and really installing teachers in each parish area that he went, and which was the beginning of what he was to do later on as a bishop, building schools everywhere. So, but he was very, very educated as well, and so he knew 12 languages. And six languages he knew up till when he was ordained, and then another 6 more as he was ministering to different peoples, because he was helping all the immigrants. First the German immigrants up when he was first ordained, and then as a bishop ministering to the Irish and the Italians, and he built the first Italian parishes. And because there were nobody to teach them, but he knew Italian, so he could teach them, and he taught them, and he had parishes teaching from his own rectory there as a bishop. So he helped all these immigrants, but he was traveling a lot when he was up in the northern New York area, going all by himself, and felt called to community life, and so he petitioned his bishop that he could enter the Redemptorists order, which was an order that took care of the poor and the abandoned in rural places. So he was accepted in 1840 in that community, but they sent him in many places, so he thought that they didn't really want him. But he did finally make his vows 2 years later in 1842, and only 4 years later after that he became the provincial of the whole Redemptorist order in America. And he was ministering in Ohio and Virginia and in New York and Pennsylvania, traveling around those areas and establishing schools, parochial schools, as he was the provincial of the Redemptorist order, and gave that recognition to the Redemptorist order. And then he became bishop in 1852, Bishop of Philadelphia, and was known especially for establishing the parochial school system in the dioceses. He set it up and organized it, and he had 2 schools when he started, and 108 years later, when he died in 1860, he built many schools, 100 schools, and he built so many churches. They said on average he built a church one every month. About 50 parishes in his diocese, traveling around as well, visiting every parish every year. It was really indefatigable bishop, and so we have his great example of fervor and zeal for the immigrants and for the American people, and we have his great example for us, and we ask for his intercession in our own efforts to do the best we can in our spiritual life and our evangelization, spreading the faith to everyone we meet.